Hi everyone, this is Katrina Flores with the Tooele County Arts Guild. I'm in Grantsville this evening with my dear friend Jane Autry, who is a longtime member of the Arts Guild and former president of the Guild before me. She is going to be doing our art presentation this month. She's going to be showing us how to create an accurate drawing using a grid system called GridX. So I'm going to turn the time over to Jane. Jane, tell us a little bit about yourself. We're here in your studio tonight, and tell us a little more about what we're going to be doing before you start presenting.
Okay, I'm really excited to do this because I'm good at it. Okay, I've done this for 30 years. When I was in high school, I took my first art class, and in doing that, I had a teacher that was actually from Tooele named Max Durant. And he gave me some skills I just didn't even know about. So my first art class was a junior in high school, and he taught me the grid pattern, and I have my first grid pattern right here. This is just an ad for a sound system, I believe. And I liked the looks of the girl, and I begged and begged the teacher, I don't want to do it in crayon, can I do it in colored pencil, please? And he went, fine. And this is the reason I'm an art teacher today, because he taught me how to do a grid pattern, because up to that point I didn't even realize that you could learn how to draw. I thought you were born with the natural talent. I don't know why I thought that, but I find that a lot of people actually think that artists just know how to draw. And we don't, we learn. And so I got really excited in that art class because could draw and it was so rewarding. So what I'm going to teach you is similar to what he taught, but his was much more complicated than what I've simplified it down to after teaching it to every class I ever taught in art. I taught at Grantsville High for 14 years, and I've taught at some other places. I've taught pottery, and even my pottery kids got this lesson, because I feel like learning how to draw is a neglected art these days. I know this from personal experience because I wasn't taught how to draw even in college. I took college classes and then went to teach at a junior high, and you know what? The teacher there gave me this book and said, learn. So I did. I went through this book 3 times and did every exercise in it. And when I was done, I'm like, okay, I think I have it. But it wasn't in college that I learned it. I got high school, and then I majored in art, but didn't learn how to draw until I really did this. And so the combination has really helped me. So let me get started here.
And let me just remind everybody watching that as Jane starts working, if you have questions, don't hesitate to hop into the comment section and type out your question, and I will relay the question to Jane, and she will gladly answer for you. So feel free to interact with Jane tonight as she presents.
Okay, so the first thing that you need to understand is that when you do a grid pattern, we're going to work from a photograph. Later on in my presentation, I will explain how that translates to real life drawing. But for right now, we're gonna be beginners for a little while, and we're going to work from a photograph. And so what I've done is I've chosen a photograph that I took, and I've printed it in black and white. Okay, printed it in black and white. And so the first thing that we need to do is trim, and this is where I was gonna do this. Is trim this off. So I have to have scissors. So it's very important that you trim the edges. You can use a paper cutter, which I usually do. Paper cutter works best. You want to make sure this is exact and very carefully done. Trimmer works nicely. Scissors are good if you're careful. This was one of my school classes. I would be demonstrating how to cut this on a paper cutter so that the kids are not cutting with scissors, because children don't cut with scissors very well. Okay, all right. So, as you notice, I'm working from a black and white photograph. But I have a color photograph here to, when I go to draw, it's so much easier to draw from a colored photograph. Partly because this is kind of complicated. It's got lots of stuff in it, so I'm just going to set that aside. So the first thing you need to do after you've trimmed your photograph and got all the white off is you're going to format your paper. Formatting means that the paper that you cut is going to be the same shape. Okay, so this is the shape, right? This is the shape. And so I'm going to put it down here, and as a student or as an artist, you'd probably be sitting at your desk working, so you don't have to have a piece of tape for this, but I'm working vertically, so I need a piece of tape. So I've got a piece of art paper on my working surface, and I'm going to very carefully put it in the very bottom left corner. Okay, bottom left corner. And like I said, I'm using a piece of tape so that it doesn't move and shift around. However, for this first part, you need a longer ruler than that, because what we're going to be doing is enlarging. And so I'm going to grab my T-square, which we'll be talking about more. And I'm going to take it, and because it's long enough, any long enough ruler will work. I'm going to take my T-square through the corner, and it's got to match right up with the corner, allowing a little tiny bit of space for your pencil. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on my picture that I'm working with, and then I'm going to take it right up off the paper. Okay, just like that. Just go right up there. All right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler, my see-through ruler, and I'm going to use it like a T-square. Okay? So what I'm going to do, and what I mean by a T-square, this is a T-square. If I hang my T-square on a straight edge, this isn't very straight. Okay, I really want to show you this, so I'm going to move this out. If I put my T-square on a straight edge like this and rest it like I do on my drafting table, and it lays against your drawing surface, it's hanging there and it lays against your drawing surface, it's perfectly straight, right? Okay. Alright, so set those over there, and okay, so we've got that. Now we're going to use your ruler like a T-square, and what I want you to do is you can take these lines, you can see through them and see the edge of your paper, and you can see through this red line right here and see how this lines up perfectly with the edge of the cut edge of the paper, right? Okay, you should be able to see that because I've got a smear of paint right there so you can see it better than white on white. That wasn't on purpose, but it worked out good. Okay, so if this is straight, this is going to be straight. Oops, unless you slip like that. Happens especially when I'm working vertical. Okay, so see how that connects up real close? All right, now I'm just going to line my ruler up and extend that line because I ran out of ruler, and I'm double checking my T-square here to make sure that's lined up good. Double checking that and going like this. Okay, now what format means, and I'm going to write that word down because it is very important in this process. Okay, what format means is that this shape is the same as this shape. It's not the same size, we're enlarging. Okay,
Scale.
Right, but this shape matches this shape. Okay, now I'm just going to take this and set it aside for a minute. And then I'm going to come down here, line this up with the corner, and go like this. Okay? Now this is where I came up with the GridX pattern. When I was in high school, we had to section our papers off half and half and half and half and measure, and we did vertical and horizontal lines. The problem with that is sometimes halfway is something strange like, what is half of 5 7/8? I don't know. Dang, I have to learn all that math? I don't want to do it. And so I learned a trick where you take a little strip of paper and you cut it to 5 7/8 and you fold it in half, and then you have a halfway point. But somewhere along the line, and I can't even remember when I figured it out, I figured out that X marks the center. And I don't have to fold papers and do math. I can just do it. So here we go. Once again, I'm going to use my T-square because it's long enough. That's the only reason I'm grabbing a T-square. Any long ruler would work for this. And I'm lining up corner to corner. Once I get the center marked, it wants to slip. That's a little top heavy. There we go. Once I get the corners lined up and the center done, then I don't have to use this anymore. Not for this one. I could if I was on a drafting table, but it's just not the right size for this. Okay, easy peasy, right? Okay, now I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to place my ruler in the center, and I'm going to make sure one of those little red lines on the edge is exactly lined up. And it doesn't matter which red line you use, it just has to line up perfectly. I don't believe perfectionism is a good thing to do until I'm doing this. Then it's like, yes, it's good. Okay. So we're going to go all the way across like that. Do the same thing this direction. Find the center. Now, if I did this line straight, we're in pretty good shape, but it's a hand-drawn line. So I'm going to go ahead and line my red line up against this bottom part because that's machine cut, and it doesn't make mistakes like I do. Okay, so line that up. Draw that line right through the center, and then I'll just line it up here, and now I can actually check that top line. If it lines up here and there, then we're in really good shape. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to put the exact same lines on this. And you won't be able to see it very well because I got pencil on black and white paper. Usually I have my students use a pen so they can see it better.
So you're putting the same lines on your black and white photograph as you just drew on your
Yes.
board. Okay.
They have to match. So you make your X first. Don't have to measure. You don't have to fold little papers and figure out half of anything. You just make an X because X marks the center. Okay? So vertical and horizontal. What we're doing is we're creating a puzzle that breaks the pieces down into smaller pieces that makes it easier to draw accurately. Okay? Alright. Oh, I haven't done that for you. That's how far we got. Okay. Alright, I'm going to take a little break here. And there's something I missed talking about that I want to talk about. Okay, so while we're talking about being an artist and being a perfectionist, okay, I want to ask you to do a few things. I want you to, at some point, I want you to journal about your art experience. Okay, so what do you love about art? Obviously, I'm not going to take the time for you to write, but what's the hardest thing about creating a finished piece of work? Why do you want to be able to draw? These things are important questions to say. Why is this important? Why would I rather do this than go skiing or motorcycle riding? Why am I going to spend my time on art? And then, is the idea the most difficult thing? How about technical skill? How about coming up with ideas of something that you want to draw? Or is it more like, well, I have really good ideas and I really love what I'm doing and I really love to be in the place where I'm doing art, but I'm not happy with my shapes or my values or my color or my edges. There's just something not right about my finished work and I need to learn those kind of things. So I want to look at the table of elements for a minute. Can you look at this table of elements, periodic table of elements? Okay, so lots of stuff on there, huh? Guess what? We don't need to learn that many. This is how many elements of art there actually are, and I want to talk about it for a minute. The first element of art is shape. So if you draw a horse and it looks like a dog, the shape's not quite right. All right? Color is the next category, the next element of art, and edge is the last element of art. And over here you see that I've broken color into 3 things: hue, value, and chroma. But color, of all these 3 elements, with value, you can create a beautiful piece of art. It doesn't have any color, but if the values are right, it's going to be wonderful. Okay? Hue is the pure color, and chroma is the intensity of the color. Value is the lightness or darkness. So many artists will argue that value is also considered an element of art, but really it is a sub-element of color. Color's like the frosting on the cake. You can do artwork without any color and it's still lovely. Okay? So we're going to talk about today is shape. This is how to get your shapes right. I was sitting in a class not all that long ago, and the teacher asked me some of these questions, and he said, "What's the hardest thing about art?" And I finally raised my hand and I said, "Getting the shapes right." And I was so relieved when he acknowledged that that's what most people have a hard time with. And that's when I became even more committed to the grid pattern. Because with the grid pattern, you can get your shapes right. And once the shapes are right, the party begins. Then you can add your color and your shading and make sure the edges got soft and hard edges and all that fun stuff. But until the shape's right, I don't go on. I get that right. Okay, and here's how you do it. So the GridX pattern allows you to do it easily. It does take time, depends on how complicated your picture is. Don't choose one like this for your first one, okay? Because that's a little crazy. But that's okay, because I can demonstrate with it just fine. All right, what am I doing now? I'm making another X. Okay. You want to be able to do enough X's to manage your details. Now my format is square on this particular piece because I have a finished project in mind that is 18 by 18, so I made sure that my grid pattern matched an 18 by 18, so you can see that it's really close. Because this part, after I've drawn that line, this is all wasted paper, okay? That's not going to be part of the artwork. You can cut it off if it's confusing, but it's kind of nice to have some paper up here that once you get the drawing done, then you can kind of test things on. Okay? All right. So where did I get? Right here. I need to do these same lines, okay, corner to corner on all 4 corners so that you have a diamond. Okay? And this is very simple, and I feel like I don't have to teach a whole lot more. However, I'm going to keep going because there's a few more tips and tricks I want to give to you. Okay, so now the lines on this match the lines on this, but I'm going to go the next step. I'm going to line up the center of the 2 X's. Don't have to measure anything. Just line up the center of 2 X's, check for T-square, make sure it's nice and straight. And then I'm going to not slide the ruler around, hold it steady. Okay. And do a vertical, and notice I went the entire length of the paper. I didn't just go from here to here. Okay, that's important. It helps you to make sure everything's lined up good, because you got 3 checkpoints here. You got the center of 2 X's, and you've got the edge of the paper to make sure and double check, because if you're making mistakes, now's the time you want to catch them, not after you've spent hours and hours drawing and all of a sudden the eyes are not lining up at all, if you're doing a portrait or something. Okay, all right. Okay, and I'm going to do it this way. Now I'm doing horizontal, and I'm going from the center of the X to the center of the X, checking my edges, making sure that I use my ruler like a T-square, get everything just right. Okay, we're looking good there. Okay, now you can start drawing at this point if you want. Well, no, you can't, because you didn't do this. I didn't do this part. So I have to add my vertical lines here and here. And I'm still using my ruler like a T-square and checking the center of my X's, even though you can't see it very well because the paper is black and white. And so is the pencil. But I'm still making sure everything's nice and even. It doesn't do any good to do a grid pattern here without and not do one here. And it really messes you up if this is sloppy. Okay? Often I'll have students that don't think this matters much and they just are careful here. But no, it all matters. It all matters. Okay, so I'm coming the center of the X there and there. All right. Matches, matches. Now, I could actually start drawing right now, and part of what you need to be able to see is how this relates to that. Okay, and let's see how can I explain that a little bit better. All right, so if I'm going to work in this square,
Could you hold up your black and white picture a little closer here so people can kind of see? So if you can see here, I know it's kind of light, but you can see the same grid patterns on her drawing as she's drawn here. No, it's just a little hard for them to see because it's black and white. So I just wanted to make sure they understood that.
Okay. All right. So if you're right-handed, the best idea is to start up here in this corner and move that way. If you're left-handed, it's best to start here and move that way. The same principle goes if you are painting or if you were shading, because a left-handed person that starts over here, for some reason it gets confusing. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to start in this box right here, and I see that I have a stem of a flower, and very often I draw right on here to see how it connects, okay? And can you see this negative shape right here that we've created? This little negative shape right here. We cross the line and we have a negative shape there. And so I can come down here and make sure I'm in the right box. And I've got a negative shape here that I'm just going to draw. And then I see that that goes up. Let's see how far it goes. That's the top of the stem. That's about halfway on that line. So I'm going to make a little dot that's about halfway on this line to aim for. And so now I'm just going to come up like that. And that is one side of that stem, and here's the other side of that stem. And I'm going a little faster than I normally do when I'm actually doing the grid pattern, but I see that that goes there. And then down here, about here, there's some fluffy stuff that I'm not going to worry about. Okay? And then so the stem goes up about right there, and then this, oops, that's not a line, that's one I drew. Okay, and then here's where my flower starts to go out, and right here, see this line right here? About halfway is how high that particular leaf goes. So it's going to just kind of gracefully go like that. And then I'm going to take it from that point and I'm going to bring it down And now I'm just drawing what I see. I've got some guidelines to know that I'm getting that one in the right place, okay? So it's not a perfect drawing yet. It's going to take some more work before I get all the kinks worked out. That probably needs to be thinner. And then I'm going to come up here. Now, if it gets hard, here's the magic trick. Okay, you're going, I can't get that in the right place. Then we take our GridX pattern and we do it again. I can make any box I want smaller without doing the whole thing smaller. Because here's a tip. Do not make little tiny boxes all over your paper because you will get lost and frustrated and you won't finish. So you don't want to make the grid any smaller than necessary to make it work, okay? So now I can say, okay, if I made the grid smaller there, I gotta make the grid smaller here. And I'm gonna go both ways. I'm gonna go through the center, check my ruler, make sure it's nice and straight like a T-square. Come through there, and right through there, okay? And that really kind of helps because see, I've got a little blossom here that I know now it's going to be in this section. It's going to come about right here. It's going to match up about right there, and I'm going to be able to draw that in there. And let's see, it's kind of curved like that. And once again, a lot of times I'll just draw right on the paper to kind of get a feeling. That seems to help a lot. One of the things that artists develop as they draw and paint is a really strong visual intelligence. And I know some people don't think that's very important, but guess what? Think about what a surgeon has to do. They have to be visually intelligent to see how all the parts of the body go together when they cut you all up. I've been watching too much TV, you can tell already. Okay, all right, so and then this line comes through, let's see, I'm going to make myself some guidelines. It crosses about right here, and it curves, and then right up here, we're getting a little spot, and then, let's see, it doesn't come straight, it comes over here a little bit. So I have a stem that curves a little bit like that. Okay, that's not very graceful, but I can fix that later. Kind of get it placed and then move on. So you're just going to work through the whole drawing like this. And obviously I am not going to make you sit here and watch me draw this whole thing. That would take too long because it's a very, very patient process. Okay, so what I've done is I've already drawn it out in its completion, because I want to be able to show you the next step, okay? So here it is. I drew the whole thing with a grid pattern, okay? And I traced over the grid pattern with a bright pink marker so you can kind of see the pattern a little bit better. All right? Okay, now that's not finished, is it? And one of the things we had to do in high school that was a pain was erase the grid. Guess what? Now I'm going to show you another trick. You don't have to erase any grid pattern. This piece of paper you can fold and take home in your backpack or whatever and make a mess out of it, and you can still use it. I can use this over and over again because I'm going to show you now how to transfer your drawing to your finished surface. So what I plan on doing, what I like to do actually, I really like to draw the whole thing first on a piece of art paper. So I would transfer it to the art paper and shade it and work out a lot of the drawing, all the details, because the shaded piece is going to be really beautiful too, and so I keep that. But what I have here is I'm going to make a sandwich. This is my prepared canvas that I'm going to paint this on in the long run, okay? It's called a cradled panel. It's got some clear gesso on it. There's that beautiful wood color showing through. I love painting on these. I just think they're fun. And I also have a piece of, what's this called?
Transfer paper.
Transfer paper, thank you. I have a piece of transfer paper, but that's not what I need first. First I need the actual drawing. Okay, so I'm going to put the drawing on here. I'm going to take some tape. I'm going to make a hinge. Okay, and that hinge is going to be at the top of your drawing and at the top of your drawing surface. I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight, but I want a hinge. I'm not going to tape it all the way around. I know you think you want to, but you don't. And just put it there. And it's going to keep things steady and straight. And then I'm going to take my transfer paper. You'll notice that the transfer paper is dark on one side and light on the other. Okay, that's important to know. So, dark side goes down, because if you do it wrong, then you'll transfer your image to the back of your drawing paper, and that is not the goal. And the only reason I'm using tape here is because I'm working vertical, which I don't usually do. I work on a desk when I'm actually transferring, so I'm going to tape it. But you won't have to tape it, because if this moves, no big deal. Okay? This is what you want to have working for you that's going to stay steady. So, because it's as big as it is, I'm going to go ahead and make the hinge a little longer, because I feel like it's too easy to shift. So. Still, it's just a hinge. I'm not going across that edge because I want to be able to lift it up and check my drawing. Okay, so I'm going to take that down. And then the fun begins, and this is where I should have a pen, and I don't have one handy, so I'm not going to take a break and go find one. This is where you want to have a pen, and a pen that works. Because the pen that doesn't work will transfer the image. But then you can't see where you've been. So I like to use like a pink pen or something obnoxious almost that you can really see. And then, pencil broke. And then I'm going to transfer by pressing just the right amount. You really don't want to press too hard, especially if you're transferring it to drawing paper. You want to stop and check. So that's why we made a hinge, so that I can stop and check and go, oh, I'm not pushing too hard. That's about right. If you push too hard, especially paper accepts this a little bit darker, and you want to make sure it's not too dark, but you want to be able to see it. Okay, and so now all that work you went into to draw the image, now you're just tracing it. And I'm not going to trace the whole thing. That would not be exciting to watch. Although I don't mind doing it. But trace it carefully. When you're done, you may still have some things you have to fix. You may have places it's gone in too dark, and you can use an eraser and pull it out. You may have things that's too light, and because you've got a sandwich here, and you can look at what you've done, you can come back and say, oh, I wanted that to be darker, and you can press harder and go over the same lines again. It's not a big deal. It's just getting that shape right, accurate, and transferred to your art paper, and then, at least for me, that's when the party begins. When I get the drawing done, then I just love to paint. I love to get into and shade and all that stuff. I love to do that. But I don't like it if I've worked really, really hard on painting and drawing, painting and shading or something really hard, and then I look at it and go, oh, the eyes are wrong. They're looking different ways. Oh, that jawline's wrong. I don't like to fix it at this point. I like to fix everything right here. Okay? So I would like to look at my notes again, make sure I haven't missed talking about something that I wanted to talk about. I just want you to really understand that you can draw. Artist measure. That's what I wanted to call this. Artist measure. They don't just look at something and draw. They look at something carefully and line things up. Like if I were drawing from life, I can use the same concept in drawing from life. And I can use a pencil. That's as simple as having a pencil for a tool. And I can look at my subject. I have to lock my elbow, but I can look at my subject, close one eye. That's important too. And measure. And I can measure, like if I can measure the size of the head, and then I can count how many heads tall this person is, even if they're sitting down. If they're sitting down, they're not as many heads tall as if they're standing up, obviously, right? But I can still use the head as a unit of measurement. If I'm doing a portrait and I'm working up close, I can measure the eye. See that thumb? That's my slider. I can measure the eye, and I can go, I'm doing plumb and level. So plumb and level means you got a tool and it has a little bubble in it. I used to lay brick with my daddy, and I had a tool called a level, and it had a little bubble, and we had to check every brick and make sure it was level before the mortar dried. And then he had a plumb, which was, should have had a real example, but he'd set the plumb on top of the brick wall, and then he'd drop a weight down on a line, and the line was chalk, and he'd flip the chalk line, and if that was straight, then we were good to go. Well, it's the same in drawing. You're measuring, and then you can check angles. After you've got all this, then your angles, see if you look at this angle cuts across here and makes this negative shape, right? And it makes this negative shape here. And so what the grid pattern also does is give you more negative shapes to compare with. So you can compare and measure and test, and if something's not right, it's really easy to fix at this point. Okay? So plumb and level, I learned the plumb and level from Harley Brown, and I know I put this book over here somewhere. This is a great book. This is where I learned how to translate a grid pattern, and I didn't find the page, so I won't take the time to do it, but from this book, Harley Brown's Eternal Truths for Every Artist. It's really good. He's an amazing artist, and you can learn a lot from these two books that I've shown you. You can learn how to do anything. Oh, then another tip I wanted to show you is if you get confused about which box you're in, I especially use this with really young students. I will have them cut out a shape like this that they can go, okay, this is the one I'm working on right now. This matches this. Let's just work this little area here. Okay? I don't ever do that personally, but I've had students that it's really helped to have a little window that they can look through, and so they're not so confused with the whole drawing, and they just look at this one and draw what they see in this particular box. Okay? Or this one. Okay? So I think, let's see.
Do you want to tell them about your supply list?
Yes, I have a supply list. It's pretty simple. Doesn't take too much. So you need a space to work in. It could be as simple as your kitchen table or a desk in your office or your bedroom. A photograph or a printed picture that you'd like to enlarge. Photographs don't work too good because you can't, an actual photograph's printed on photo paper, and so you can't really draw on that very well. You can. But a printed picture like what you spit out, the cheap paper in your little home printer works the best. And then you need to pick something to cut with. Scissors, paper cutter, trimmer, a see-through ruler, which I've already talked about, sharp pencils, transfer paper, which you can buy. It used to be hard to find this transfer paper, but I just got it at Dick Blick. They have a lot of it now, and it comes in a nice big roll, and I like that. That's fun. I cut it whatever size I need. And the transfer paper is reusable. You can use it over and over and over again until it's just worn out. Okay, but you can use it a lot. Drawing paper, I usually work on 18 by 24 drawing paper, but it depends on your final goal and what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, and you need to have your watercolor paper or your canvas or your drawing paper ready so that you can transfer it when you're done. So it just depends on your plans. Good erasers, a kneaded eraser is a wonderful tool. It's the one that you love to play with like this. And the more you play with it, the cleaner it gets and the softer it gets, and you can make it in any shape you want. And you can attack something that you've drawn and just get rid of it. Oh, I don't want to do it on there because I have transfer paper there. But play with this and it works really good. And any variety of erasers are wonderful to have. Pink pearl, a white thing, I don't know what that's called. I just collect erasers. I have lots of them. But this is my favorite eraser. It comes right down to, especially when I'm shading. Has batteries. And it can be, you can cut that and make it really pointed with your X-Acto knife and get in the tiniest little spots. It's really wonderful. So, yes, you need erasers, masking tape, and patience, courage, and perseverance, especially if you select really complicated things like this one. Through the years, I've taught many people how to do the GridX pattern, and I've had several students who still use it. I know what they do. We talk. So I think I'm done. Do we have any questions?
No questions, but for everybody who has watched, you've had quite a few viewers. James, that was awesome. We are going to be posting Jane's supply list in the comments section of this video later. This video will be uploaded to our videos tab on the Tooele County Arts Guild's Facebook page shortly. It takes a little while after we finish the video for it to post. So keep your eye open. You can watch this again, or if you weren't able to join from the beginning, you can watch it over and over again, and that's where we will also post the supply list. So don't forget to join us next month for another art presentation. Jane, thank you for presenting to us today. That was a wonderful presentation, and we had a lot of viewers. So thank you to everybody who watched. Feel free to comment if you have questions. We can get back to you that way. And stay creative, and we will see you at our next presentation. Thanks, everyone.